Hello, this is Amber from 2B Coaching and Consulting and Michele Mercurio from
Michele Mercurio.
Michele. This is
I'm
Michele.
a brand. Yeah, I'm Michele. I'm just
she's
me.
Michele. She has graciously agreed to talk with me today. Many of you know that a part of the work I do is focused on female rivalry. And so I'm always collecting stories. And often those stories are negative, and they're painful and they're awful, but it helps me understand the insight of what each woman has gone through when she's experienced this type of behavior. There is a flip side to that, which I'm always searching for stories. The flip side is I do believe there are positive competition stories, and what I mean by that, it's in a group of 3 or more women. 2 is a partnership, and 3 or more, sometimes that third wheel, not everybody plays nicely in the sandbox. But when you work well with 3 or more women, what an example of that might have been, what it looks like, and why do you think it works so well? So I'm going to ask Michele. The first question is, do you have any stories you'd like to share with me about when you've experienced rivalry with another woman, either in the working environment or in your life in general?
So I actually have 2 really good examples. One of them, and the funny thing is I believe it's groups of two groups of women, and it was there were the same amount of women in both of the groups.
Okay.
And they are completely polar opposite.
Okay. How many women were in it?
Okay, so I believe in the first one, so the first group that I'm going to talk about, there were 5 of us.
Okay.
So, and then the second one, there were 4 of us. So it's very similar though.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the first group, and I'm going to start with a negative and end on a high note.
Perfect.
I'll end on the positive note. So in the first group, I was still in the corporate world. So it was before I started my own business, and I was working with a group of women on a national team where we were in charge of basically executing programs for many divisions of our company at a lower level.
Okay.
So there were offices throughout the United States.
Gotcha.
We were based out of a home office.
Okay.
And our job was to put policies and procedures together, and then also basically coach and help the people who were in the field do the work that we needed to get done.
Okay.
And so I joined this team because I was super excited to lead one of the divisions, I would say, within the larger division. So one of the subcategories. And I joined an already well-formed team.
Okay.
So
are you meeting, I know you said the organization has many legs. Are all of you together, or is some of the team virtual?
I was one of the virtual members.
Okay.
Some of the team was local, and then there was one other virtual member.
Gotcha.
And when I was hired in, I was just super excited because I was really just thrilled about all the things that we were going to be able to accomplish together. And I joined a team that many of them were located in one office.
Okay.
And I, again, was remote, so I would fly in occasionally, and I would be part of that team.
And where were you in your, just to set the foundation, what were you, entry level? Did you have a few years under your belt?
Definitely a few years under my belt. Okay. So I would say at the senior not the executive, but senior management level.
And were the ages similar, or were there varying ages of the women on the team?
I would say that the ages for the team members were from about age, I would say 28 to 38.
Okay.
And our collective executive that was over us was quite a few years older than us.
And that was a female?
Female.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
I'm just setting the baseline a little bit, but yes.
No, these are great questions because they all will play in, and I know that you know this. Okay. So our manager, the person who hired me, has this persona who was, she was just sweet. She's just a sweet person.
Okay.
But she wasn't a sweet
I
person.
knew. I was like,
says the narrator voice. So, and then Morgan Freeman comes in and the narrator voice, but she wasn't a sweet person. And how she built her team is she's like, I'm very hands off, but she wasn't hands off. Okay. And, I allow people to make decisions in their lane. I allow people, but she did not. Mm-hmm. I allow, I think that competition is good, but I also think that collaboration is great. So it was this whole idea about what it looked like to be a part of this team.
Okay. What she sold you.
What she sold me.
Okay.
And, what I had even observed in the interview process. Mm-hmm. And I went in and I was excited to work with 3 other leaders of their specific divisions underneath the overarching umbrella of the division that we were in. Mm-hmm. And each of them were all very strong women as well. Mm-hmm. I equate myself to a lot of where they were, but they were kind of maybe a little bit younger than where I was and had been given leadership positions that maybe they were ready for, but maybe they weren't as well. And so all of them, and they all had they were all friends.
Probably had been for a while.
And they had been for a while. Okay. Yes. See, so you
Mm-hmm.
already know some of the story, even though you don't know the story.
Familiarity.
Yes, yes. So I came in and immediately was like, okay, these are some of the things that I would love to learn about you all. This is some of the stuff that I've done in my past. Mm-hmm. This is where I want to take this group with what I've got going on. Let's collaborate, because I had learned early on in my career, and I've learned a lot of really great lessons, but one of the things that has stuck with me over and over again is you don't communicate by talking, you communicate by listening. Mm-hmm. And so I came in really with my ears open first. Sure. And yes, I had a lot of ideas. But in one of the very first meetings that I was with everybody, my boss pulled me aside afterward and said, you've got to jump in there. We talk over each other. You've got to jump in there. If you actually have an idea, you need to jump in there or you're just going to get walked on.
Okay.
And I said, I have ideas, of course.
Yeah.
And I'll give my ideas, but I don't believe that being a leader means you have to talk over people. Mm-hmm. And I don't believe that you have to fight to be heard. Mm-hmm. And I have learned many times that by listening, I'm going to add something of value, as opposed to just adding to the noise.
Okay.
And so I was a part of this team for 3 years overall. And my whole first year on this team, every time I went in, it was, I'm misunderstood. I'm not included. I didn't get invited to the
They're
dinner.
Saying this to you. Or you?
I was feeling
you
this.
You were feeling this.
I was feeling not included, not invited,
sure.
Not anything, not heard. Mm-hmm. And I would then, when it was my turn, I started to ask for time on the floor then and just say, hey, I would like to spend this hour speaking on the things that I need, input on, the collaboration with. Hey, can we do this? I would go to one of my counterparts who I would need to make something happen. We'd have to work together.
Yeah.
And it would be like, oh yeah, sure. Or that's not how we've done it. That's never how we've done it. So, and it's so yeah, sure. And then I get the brush off. Mm-hmm. Or it was, we've never done it that way.
Okay. It's a learning curve because you're new in that organization and you're not sure how they operate, but after a period of time, there's a pattern.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so some of it too was and then I also faced a lot of resistance to, well, we've never had a person in the role that you're in, Michele. So I have no idea why we would even want to partner with you on this. You stay in your lane, we'll stay in ours. Mm-hmm. And yet everything really worked together. Yeah. Except for the fact that none of them wanted to work with me.
And can you recall this is great what you're sharing, any specific things that like comments or specific things that you'd walk away and go, huh?
This isn't relevant to me.
Yeah.
Meaning that.
Yeah, meaning that.
They would say that to me. This isn't relevant to me. Okay. But what about this factor, this factor, this factor? I need your people to also support this. That's a dumb idea.
Oh, nice.
We aren't, your section is totally different than from what we're doing. There was always this kind of lack of wanting to understand what I could bring, even though I saw opportunities within what they could bring.
Sure.
Where I took the time to understand how I could help them.
It wasn't flipped.
It wasn't flipped.
So you were there, you said 3 years.
I was.
And then how did that come to a point? Or
okay, yes. Yeah. So this is actually, thank goodness, is what in many ways launched my own career. So the first year that I was there, I got a subpar performance review from my boss, who was not organized, who one night got drunk at a group dinner and looked at me and said, "You could do my job better than me, Michele."
Oh.
And I said, "But I don't want your job." But I knew at that point I was doomed.
Yeah.
There was no changing anything.
And to go back just on how the dynamic was set up, something you had said that they made the comment, your position was new and they'd never done it. Was it your boss's idea to have you come in, or was it from higher up?
Higher up. It was for the president of the company. The president of the company says, so we need this.
Out of her control.
Go get this girl. Yes. She does this really well.
Yeah. Okay.
And my boss was excited because she was like, "Oh, I've heard nothing but amazing things about you," because I had already done this for another organization. Excuse me. And then it was a personality conflict.
Yeah.
The entire time. My boss would show up, she would say one thing, and then she'd go do another. She wouldn't follow through on things.
That's a common behavior.
She wouldn't follow through on things. She didn't have time for me. She consistently canceled our one-on-ones.
So you're not getting any feedback. Was she telling you something and then would leave and tell other people something different? Okay.
Yes. Yep. That was something that absolutely. If I would say something to the president of our company, it was all amazingly good, except for whenever it got translated through my boss, it turned out that I was the fall guy.
Oh, that's never.
Or the fall girl in this case.
Yeah, the fall girl in this case. So 3 years to live with that is not a good feeling.
It was definitely not a good feeling. And
do you think you realized it right at the beginning, or did that take time to understand what you were in?
I thought for a long time, I felt like I was stupid.
Yeah.
And I was missing the point. And
you doubted yourself.
I doubted my abilities. I thought to myself, did I ever have the success that I thought that I had? Am I not communicating right? As somebody who
is a communicator,
who makes a living off of helping other people communicate things. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm always perfect.
Oh, gosh, no.
Because I'm not, and nobody is.
But that's your skill set.
Right.
Yes. You do it well. So
my behavior at work, I often believe that, like, I believe in showing up as myself at work. And I felt like my person was not accepted at that work ever. And when I had some big things happen while I was there. I was dealing still with the death of my nephew, and there were, the first anniversary of his passing was coming up while I was in this role.
Yeah.
And I mentioned it, and it was just kind of like, oh, like, I'm sorry for you, Michele. Like, just don't share anything that's actually personal. But it wasn't like I was giving details. It was just like I wasn't allowed to be me.
And that's a horrible feeling.
Yes. And so I was with this group for a while. And, I got, like I said, the first subpar performance review that I had ever gotten. Never could quite crack into what it was. It would come up with plans and strategies and be like, we can go do this, would never get feedback. I would say, hey, this strategy is dependent on some of my colleagues, and would never get feedback. And it wasn't that I was waiting for the feedback either. It was, I was looking at ways to partner and collaborate and value add and set goals and interaction and collaboration. And I didn't want anybody to do it for me. I was actually offering things as well. And it turned out it just never worked. So I actually had gone to my boss and said, look, this is just really not working. Here's what I'm thinking. Here's how I would restructure the department. Here's how I would do all these things. Here's how I would
take to the female boss.
To my boss, to the female boss. And I would say, here's how I would restructure everything. This is what I would put underneath this new umbrella. I would have somebody at this level. I would have these 4 people over here, supporting this so we could actually achieve our organizational goals. And she said no. And a year later, she came back to me and she said, hey, Michele, I've been thinking, I'm going to restructure the department. This is what I have planned. And it was basically the plan I had sent her. Down to everything that I had outlined for her a year before. And she said, and we're eliminating your position.
Wow.
And she said, and so I actually sat there and I talked to her, and by this point I had known her game. And I said, you're going to need this position over here if you're going to do it this way. Why don't you hire somebody and have me report to that person? And she came to me and she said, who do you think would be a good leader? And it was somebody I had hired to be on my team. And I said, I think this person would be an amazing leader. I think you should interview her. And this person became my boss.
Wow, that's a flip and change. And
it was amazing.
That's wonderful.
Because this person also recognized all of the
she saw it.
Bullshit that was happening.
So this transition occurs. How was it after that, after you were no longer intimately on that team and reporting under that woman? How
amazing.
Tell me about what shifted. Did the personalities change? Did inclusion change? Do they still treat you the same because you weren't a threat anymore? Or what? If you
I never saw those other people really again, and I never spoke to them again. In fact, when I would come up to do collaboration with my new team,
because you didn't need to,
they largely ignored me, which was great. Because
what about the old boss?
Mostly avoided eye contact with me.
She knew.
Mostly avoided me completely. When I ended up leaving the company, didn't say anything at all. Mostly knew that basically she screwed up. And mostly knew that she didn't know what to say or do to handle it. And instead of handling it, was very conflict averse. Even when it didn't have to be a conflict at all.
Sure. It became that way to her.
And when I sailed out that door for the last time,
whoop,
it was a beautiful experience. And for a long time, I was like, I was mad at like how it unfolded. But now I feel like that I'm saddened by the fact that the leadership group at this company will never actualize what it is that they truly say that they want to do. I mean, they might be profitable, which is actually what they want to do. But they will never achieve the mission that they're looking for because they didn't empower their leadership to and help their own leadership grow, and they promoted the wrong people. It sounds
like the culture. They need a culture shift.
Their culture was awful.
And if that behavior is being endorsed, it's toxic.
Yes. So and I had just
you were
come
the brunt of it. Yes.
And I had just come from the group of the positive.
Oh, yes. I love a good positive story. These are more rare, but I know they're out there.
Yes.
So I'm excited to hear this. Thank you.
Yes. So I also worked within a group that we decided to do a complete change management of 90 some locations of our company nationwide.
Which is a big endeavor.
It was. And we were going to take a program that was largely reactionary and make it strategic. And make it part of, like, taking something that was more of a, we're checking the box on this, and making it part of the fabric of the experience of all of the locations.
So the foundation and part of the meat and potatoes versus just, okay, I did this, wait till next year to check the box again.
Right.
Okay.
Right. It was something that was essential to our company, but everybody was approaching it from a check the box standpoint.
Yes.
And whereas if we had promoted, or we had, done this from kind of a holistic approach, it would be way more than check the box, and it would have catapulted our company to even better results and earnings and things that people could say that we, that were tangible
things.
And I worked with a team of 4 women. So within 4, there was 4 of us. Actually, and eventually there was 5. So again, 5. I got to hire somebody, and we laid out this whole kind of change management initiative of how our new group was going to operate. And we came up with all of the tools, resources, trainings, tactics,
whole plan.
Communication plan.
Toolbox.
Buy-in from every executive all the way up to the president and CEO of the organization, chairman of the board, like everybody. And we worked so well together in the fact that all of us were striving for, like, mastery. So we had different functions, but we were helping each other as we were all barreling toward our own goals.
Sure. So your personal goals were in the in-state organizational goals. So that's wonderful. And who was the leader or the boss of this group?
Also a woman.
Okay.
Who now is an author, a published author. When she left kind of the corporate world, she decided she wanted to write fiction, and has never looked back, and got published, and is on her 3rd or 4th book now. But here are the characteristics that made her her. She came in and she listened first. She came in and she figured out everybody's strengths. She came in and made a team first. And even when there were people that were kind of brought in and might have already had, like, their own clique, she made it like, we're not doing it that way. We're going to build this way. And together. She took a personal vested interest in people and made us click as a team.
That's wonderful.
And even though all of us had a lot of the same goals on our performance reviews, it wasn't and in a company of, like, that forced distribution where it's like, only so many people can be top performance only. It didn't matter. So while we were still competing for all being a top performer, and there was no way all of us could be. If one of us won, all of us won.
It was for the team. So she sounds amazing. A question on that note. So it sounded, did she give you individually your own autonomy to do your work? Or versus, it sounds like that. I like
absolutely
versus being a micromanager.
And it was, come to me with a plan. Let me know if I can help you with the plan, and then go execute the plan, and let me know if I can help you with that. What do you need? What resources can I do for you?
So on that team, just to level set, what were the ages of the women?
Older, slightly older. I mean, there was still probably, I would say, mid-30s to 50.
Okay, so you have a broader demographic, but that's great.
Yeah. And I was going to say, I think I was probably one of the youngest ones on the team.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the kind of the caliber of that leadership team.
Yeah.
And funny enough, this manager was about the same age as
the previous one.
Uh-huh.
So to go from
and she was actually first. The positive was first, and then I ended with the other one. That's what I was
going to say. To go from a positive to that negative situation, that must have been a blow.
It was.
How did the positive end? Did it just the project was complete?
The project was complete, and our boss moved on.
Oh, she became the author.
Yep, and they hired a guy to lead our team who was probably like, I would equate him to Trump.
Oh.
Okay, sorry. No, I shouldn't say this, but he was an awful human. Yeah. Truly an awful human, and basically took all of our autonomy away and micromanaged us as well. And that's why I left that organization to go to the other organization. And we all left.
Yeah.
We all left.
That would be miserable. Just to go back on the positive, which you've answered a lot of these. How did you feel when you were in that type of...
Amazing. Like, it was 11:30 at night one night, I remember, and I was working on a project, and I was on the phone with my project manager, who was, he was in a different city, and I remember my husband coming down and knocking on my office door, and he's like, and I'm like, I'm not coming to bed. I'm in the middle of this, like, and we were like writing these procedures, and not even just procedures. They were like truly like things that also took into consideration the career trajectories of all of our employees, like really built this beautiful thing. And I'm like, I'm not coming to bed. I'm excited.
I'm on this.
And not only that, the next morning I'm up at 6:30 and I'm doing it again.
Yeah. And you're still excited.
Yep, exactly.
Thank you. These are wonderful stories. I'm sorry that you experienced the negative.
I'm not.
But see, I'm not either. Because it, to know, I mean, I can understand by what I've interviewed and women share with me, but knowing how I've experienced it personally, I really can walk in their shoes. And I think feeling that makes you realize what you don't want to be, and to know, to also have the positive experiences and know that there are women out there that uplift and support and empower, and you can be a team and you can have positive collaboration. And there's always ups and downs, but it doesn't have to be the ruthless negativity where you're bringing each other down, because there's no need to judge or project or all these things. So
yeah. And I know that it's so funny to me, and you and I have talked about this before, about how when you, in your personal life, when you have somebody who empowers you professionally, like, that changes. Again, like, I'm excited to work, and it didn't always have to be about work, but I was excited to do other things in my personal life.
Well, and the flip side to that, if you are encountering something negative in the working environment, you bring it home with you. I mean, it just doesn't stay in the office 9 to 5. And so it affects everything you do.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So thank you, Michele.
Thank you.
I love these conversations. And I appreciate you.
I appreciate you.
And ladies out there, if you have a story to share, I'd love to hear it. And I'm always here. And if you have ideas of any stories you would like to hear about, or for my blogs or my social media posts, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.